What is the Terps ceiling for the 2024 season?
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, video content creator for 247 Sports and InsideMarylandSports.com, and host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. I want to start off with this point. The Terps 2024 ceiling is lower than their 2023 ceiling. I'm curious kind of to what you guys think about that, if you guys agree with that, if you guys don't agree with that. But I think that going into next year, our ceiling as a program and as a team and the talent around Coach Locksley and what he has built is a little bit lower than what our ceiling was last year. First of all, I thought last year's team actually had a really high ceiling overall. I thought that we could have accomplished one of the better seasons in Maryland football in a while, and it ended up being a good season for sure, but it didn't quite live up to what I thought our ceiling could have been. I thought we could have gotten maybe to 10 wins last year. I think it was not crazy at all to think our ceiling as a program was 10 wins as the Maryland team last year. I don't think, if you look back at our losses last year, of course, we had the big three. If you rule those out, the Penn State, Ohio State, the Michigan losses, if you rule those out and say, okay, Maryland as a program, we're not there. We're not supposed to beat those type of teams. Those teams get the top players. Those teams are a top team in the country. They're going to be playoff contenders. They're going to be playoff teams every single year in this new, almost every single year in this new playoff format with going to 12 teams and maybe even expanding it even more in the future. But those are going to be playoff teams consistently. Those are your top 10 type of teams in the country. Those are the programs that are a little bit just out there that it's really hard to get there as a program, and it's really not possible without a certain amount of funds and NIL and a certain recruiting type of thing. Maybe you could have 1 year where you get lucky and have an insane type of year, but on a consistent basis, they're far away from those three. So we rule those out and we say, okay, those three losses, okay. But if you go back to last year, if before the season even started, I said that could we get to 10 wins? I thought it was very possible, and I think how the season went, I think you almost could have argued that we should have gotten to 10 wins. If you look at the Northwestern game, there was no reason for us to lose to that Northwestern team. We were better than them. Northwestern ended up not having a bad year at all. I'm pretty sure they were in a bowl game, and they got a new coach from it. Their interim head coach became their head coach. But just based on how things were going, there was no way that you could have said that Maryland team was less talented than that Northwestern team. I would not have said that at all. I would have definitely said the Maryland football team was a better team on paper. It was a team that we should have beaten. It was a road game, but we were in the game and we didn't play good football, turn the ball over. We really beat ourselves in that type of game. So that's one win that could have contributed to Maryland's ceiling being about 10 wins last year. And then also the Illinois loss. Illinois, not a bad team at all. Definitely a solid program, a solid football team. They got a really good basketball team as well right now. Of course, got kind of smacked by UConn, but who didn't get smacked by UConn in the tournament? But I was looking at that Illinois loss, and I was like, that was another game we absolutely should have won. We were a favorite in that game. We were a favorite in the Northwestern game as well. Those are two games that you look at from last year and you say, okay, if you look at Maryland's ceiling as a program, it would have been winning those two games against those two programs and then being really 10 being 10-3 going into bowl season overall. But that's not exactly how it came out. Instead, we were 7-5 going into bowl season, but we should have been 9-3 going into bowl season and about to get the 10th win against Auburn in the Music City Bowl game. We probably would have been in a better bowl game if we were able to do that. And I think we had the pieces to do that. But I don't know if you could say this year our ceiling is 10 wins as a program. I don't know if you can put us there. Even last year, you could have even argued that we should have beaten Michigan. We were in the game against Michigan. You could have argued that our ceiling was beating a Michigan type of team because we almost did it. And so it's hard to argue against it, even with the Talia interceptions in that game. We were in that game the whole entire game. We had the lead in the fourth quarter. We put all the pressure on Michigan. You could even potentially say that Maryland's ceiling last year was 11 wins. I'm going to stick with the 10, but you do have a complete case to say that. Even the Ohio State game, we should have been up by more at half, but good teams win those type of games. Great teams find a way to win those type of games when they're leading, and the teams that can't find a way to make the next step, they don't. And that's kind of what Maryland has been for a while now, but that ceiling could have been 10 wins. I think that's where I stick it at. And I'm looking at this year. What do I think the Terps ceiling is compared to last year's team? I'm saying the ceiling was 10 wins, I think. Maybe you could argue 11 for ceiling. You guys got to remember, this is the ceiling. This isn't like what I expect to happen. This is the best case scenario. Obviously, maybe you could say a ceiling is undefeated for a team. Like, crazier things have happened in this world, but I'm going to be like a realistic type of ceiling. I would say it's 10 wins. This year's team, it is different. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm unsure of kind of where we lie, honestly. I don't know if we are going to be the same type of team that we've seen over these last couple of years. I don't know if we had that same roster that we had last year. Last year, you could have argued was Coach Loxley's best team yet as a Maryland football coach. I think we regressed. This year, and I don't think we have the same ceiling that we had last year. First of all, we lose our quarterback. We lose Talia Tagovailoa, the leader of the program, the guy that really almost like definitely one of the most important Maryland football players of all time, but like, I don't want to say single-handedly, but he was a huge part in flipping this program around into a place where it's kind of in a dumpster to a place that it's in a good spot. And Talia today, I don't even know if he's like an insane talent. He just knew how to play the game of football. He knew how to play Coach Loxley's offense, but I wouldn't say he was like overly talented, like he was all over the place throwing darts. But he could just make throw after throw after throw, accurate throw after accurate throw, and that really made a difference. And it was consistent. He would also turn over the ball too, but he was consistent in terms of passing yards and passing touchdowns and creating big plays. He was consistent, and that led us to win games. We're looking at the quarterback position this year. I don't see a consistent option right now. I don't. And I think Coach Loxley doesn't either, or he would tell us he said it, and if you can read a couple articles, it's Coach Loxley talking about he has no idea how this quarterback competition is going to go. He doesn't know who has the edge right now. He doesn't know who's winning this thing. And that kind of speaks to the ceiling, and the quarterback is what's going to contribute the most to the ceiling as a program. And so with that quarterback controversy that we currently have, if it was like three guys that were just like complete like top end players, like maybe had a 5-star freshman and some other guy that may have been a 4-star back in the day, like more like maybe like what's a quarterback battle that was like really top end but didn't end up being like it just there was a lot of talent in the room, but maybe like Texas quarterback battle. I actually like that example. I don't know if it was exactly a battle, but you have Arch Manning in that room, 5-star, supposed to be the next big thing. And then you have Quinn Ewers, who can potentially be the first-round pick next year. And then you have Malik Murphy, who also looks like quite a talented player as well at like 6'5", absolute unit. You can look at their quarterback room and say, okay, that's a room where it's like a quarterback controversy, but the ceiling is still really high with each of those three guys. I don't know if I can say that about this Maryland football quarterback room right now. I don't know if I can say that every single one of those guys I like can find some type of like real confidence in all of them. They're all talented in different ways, but I'm not going to act like they're all like 5-star guys. It's going to take some time probably to figure it out. And I think that contributes to the ceiling, and that could allow us to slip an early game to maybe a team like Virginia. We're not as explosive at tight end. We lose our matchup nightmare in Corey Dyches that I'm going to talk about later in the last segment, who decided where to go. When we were pretty good at tackle last year with Delmore Glaze and Gottlieb Ayizde, two guys that are going to get drafted, I think. And then we lose most of our secondary, and there's not like this like auto replacement. It's not like, yep, he's the starting quarterback next year. Like that guy's next up. Like There's no auto replacement. We lose Bo Braid, our starting safety, our all Big Ten type of player. And so I'm looking at all those type of players and all those guys that we lost. And sure, going into last year, we lost guys too. But a lot of the key positions were already filled. Talia was back. That was the most important thing. And so when you start with Talia, your ceiling is already in a pretty good spot because he can win you a couple games. Maybe you're not supposed to win. We got Roman Hemby back. Our wide receiver looked pretty amazing. We had Delmar Glaze back, and he maybe could have entered the draft. And even though the offensive line was definitely still a question mark, our defensive line looked decent. It wasn't anything special, but we had 2 cornerbacks that are going to try and get into the NFL. Bo Braid's going to be a top 5, 4-round guy at safety. It was like you looked all around. Jayshawn Barham, a playmaker. We also lose him. That also contributes to ceiling, playmaking on defense. And so I'm looking at it, and I'm like, there's a lot of guys to replace. I'm not saying that we can't continue to go on an upper track, but in terms of my take on things and my prediction on things, I just don't see the ceiling being as high as it was last year. That doesn't mean that you can't play better than your talent. Like Kevin Durant says, hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard. I'm not saying last year's team didn't work hard, but you can still find ways to win as a less talented team. But right now, I don't have the same confidence that I've had last year. I'm not going to say this is Coach Loxley's best team because I think last year's team was better, and you could argue that the 2 years ago team was even better. We're going to see how well he's recruited. He's recruited really well in the 2024 class and 2023 class, but that's going to take a little bit. 2024 class isn't even there yet. So we'll see overall how it goes, but I don't think the Maryland this season, their ceiling as high as last year. And I put the ceiling at about – one win less is kind of like doesn't seem like a big deal, but I would put the ceiling at about 9 to 8 wins for Maryland football next year. Who are the guys, the wide receivers, that I am most worried about playing next year? I will talk about the most scared guys that I do not want to see next year for Maryland football and how we could potentially deal with them. I will tell you about that after this ad from the Gametime app. Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minute, like a Maryland Terrapins game, but finding tickets is hard? I have been there before. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy all the tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Gametime has deals on last-minute tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last-minute tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I want to do a little bit of a different type of segment. I want to talk about the guys that next year I am most scared to play at the receiver position. That was a little bit of a tongue twister right there. You guys tell me if you guys like this, if you like me talking about a little bit of the other players that we could potentially play next year in terms of football or basketball. I plan on going through other position groups, but these are the guys that I'm most scared to face in terms of the wide receiver battle. Maybe I'll do quarterbacks next time, but these are the scariest wide receivers that I think, some of the scariest guys that we face and guys that I think are really good players. Starting with Oregon wide receiver Evan Stewart. So we transferred from Texas A&M. This kid's explosive. I think he's like one of the best wide receivers in all of college football. I don't think he reached quite his potential at Texas A&M. He's a really good player, don't get me wrong. A couple of times I turned on a Texas A&M game and I saw him and I was like, that guy's a little bit different. Like, he can move a little bit differently. Like, he has a potential to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft, and that might come out next year at Oregon. I'm thinking Dylan Gabriel is going to be their starting quarterback. They also brought in the freshman Moore as well, or I guess he'll be a sophomore next year. But Dylan Gabriel, if he can get this guy the ball a lot, this guy's explosive. I'm scared to face Evan Stewart, especially with the inexperience in our wide receiver room. Last year, he had 38 receptions for 514 yards, 4 touchdowns, and I think he'll continue to be like one of the better wide receivers in the country. I think he can run routes. I think he's an explosive athlete. I think he can do a little bit of everything. And honestly, I'm scared that when we have to face him and how we can cover him with the inexperience that we have in our current wide receiver. The other kid on my list was a freshman last year, and it's a new opponent that we don't normally play, and USC wide receiver Zachariah Branch. So it's interesting now that we play USC and Lincoln Riley's offense and all that has to do with that. That's going to be a different look for the Big Ten entirely, and for Maryland, that's not a team that we normally get to play, of course. A new team in the Big Ten, and I think they actually come to us, I'm pretty sure, on next year's schedule, which is going to be a pretty interesting type of game to have us there. It would be pretty cool to go to USC. I would love to be able to go to USC and see that type of game, but I definitely wouldn't be doing that. I wouldn't be traveling over there to California, but that does seem like a really cool spot that you definitely want to see in your lifetime. But Zachariah Branch, the freshman wide receiver, first game I saw this kid, it was like one of the first games of the college football season. I was like, that kid is going to be a problem. And he definitely had an up and down year. Sometimes was injured, but he is the type of guy that can just open up a game and that you're looking at him being like, dang, that guy is just a little bit different. Like, he can hit a gear that not most guys can hit. And he's a guy that can open up that USC defense that I can see just like creating a couple big plays against Maryland. And we're like, dang, like this kid is special. This kid is a little bit different. And he's not that big. He's not that tall. But the thing is, he does a little bit of everything. He can go out and play receiver, play the slot, maybe play a little bit outside. He can run him deep, run him on a screen, run him on some shallow crossing routes. Maybe it's so hard to keep up with the kid because of how explosive he is. And the thing is, his freshman to sophomore year, a lot of coaches say that from your freshman to sophomore year is your biggest jump that you'll make as a player. And he was a really good player last year. And so I'm expecting even a jump up from how he was last year, which is a scary thing to think. He might be a better athlete. He might get stronger. And the thing is, he impacts the game in so many ways. Like I said, at the receiver position, but he also returns kicks. He returns punts. And that's a pretty scary thing to go against when you think of guys that are scary at the receiver position. And again, with the inexperience at our cornerback room, facing an explosive athlete like that, you could let one go, and next thing you know, you miss a coverage or the safety, you don't have a safety over the top. He's gone for 7, and that can be the difference in the type of game. I don't know how good their quarterback play is going to be, and I don't know if they've really figured it out yet. But even so, good receivers can make quarterbacks look great. That's what a lot of the quarterbacks have. I think that Talia was a little bit of a testament. I think Maryland always had good receivers, and USC definitely has some guys on the outside. They have some younger players on the outside that are going to be good players for them. But I think it really starts with Zachariah Branch and how explosive he is. That's just 2 guys that I want to talk about that I think next year are really scary about that we have to play. Everyone's going to talk about the quarterback position and just the coach and the team, and playing USC and playing Oregon. It's a little bit different. But I wanted to add on 2 guys that I thought are scary to play that are new to the Big Ten this year, and Evan Stewart and Zachariah Branch. Corey Dyches has a new team. I will talk about that after this ad from FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your best place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed, guys. Make sure you guys go into FanDuel. You can bet on your favorite MLB team, your favorite NBA team. The NBA playoffs are here. I know some of you guys love that. And then also the NHL. I got some hockey fans in here. And you get $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on the app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So Corey Dyches has a new team, and he has decided to transfer to Charlotte. And I'm a little bit surprised, I think a lot of people are a little bit surprised about Corey Dyches going to Charlotte, just because I think people, me included, thought he would go somewhere I didn't think he would go quite wherever he wanted, but I thought potentially he could go definitely Power 5 and probably somewhere pretty big time. I thought maybe he could go to an SEC, another Big Ten. I thought he had plenty of opportunities, and I don't know exactly how it went, so I'm not saying that he didn't. Maybe he just chose differently than what we expected, but how he performed as a Maryland player, I expected him to be able to just kind of like have a ton of options, but instead he settles for Charlotte, which is interesting because it's just not a program I would have expected him to go to. 49 receptions, 491 yards last year, and 2 touchdowns for the Maryland Terrapins. He made a huge difference in our offense. I talked about it. He was just so hard to match up against. He wasn't like the biggest tight end ever, but his speed and athleticism coming out, it was just like, woof, like you can't really put a linebacker on him. Like, he's going to separate from that guy. And he did a great job of creating big plays, had a couple of huge games, had just a couple of really good seasons. In 2022, had 39 receptions for 494 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was just an explosive threat out the backfield, or not out the backfield, but from the tight end spot. And now I'm looking at it and I'm saying, I think he should have stayed at Maryland. Sometimes the grass is not greener on the other side. Sometimes it's not better. And I don't want to like put this down and being like, Corey Dyches, you should have stayed at Maryland, because I don't know the situation. I don't know if he was enjoying it. I don't know what exactly happened. But if it goes kind of how I think it went, is he entered the transfer portal and didn't get the looks that he wanted and he had to settle on Charlotte, then I think it's not crazy to say I think he should have stayed at Maryland, because I'm looking at it and I'm saying Maryland's going to put you in a better spot to play in the pros. I do think he's a pro type of player. He's kind of an interesting type of chess piece. He's not kind of your prototypical tight end, but the NFL likes those type of guys. And I think playing at Maryland, playing in the Big Ten, being an all Big Ten type of player, playing against some of the better players, I think really would have benefited him. And it wasn't like he wasn't like one of our star players, one of our better players. He was like kind of the star of the show a lot of the time. He was definitely a guy that was like I said, a matchup nightmare for the Maryland Terrapins coming from the tight end spot. Like, PFF had him as 4th in grading among tight ends in the country. Like, this kid was a stud a lot of the times. Sure, he was quiet sometimes last year, but that's just because we had so many guys on the outside with Jayshon Jones, and you had Ty Felton, and then you had Caden Prather, and then you had Octavian Smith, and then you had Roman Hemby coming out the backfield. And it was like, okay, maybe sometimes he had quieter games, but there was also times it's like that he's having a huge game. Like in the beginning of the season, the 6 receptions, 108 yards against Towson's, 4 receptions for 56 yards against UVA, 8 receptions for 60 yards against Penn State, 2 for 64 against Rutgers. He definitely had some big games. Sure, some quieter games in there. Indiana, 1 reception for 10 yards. Michigan State, 1 reception for 9 yards. But those are still games that we played well in. And I wonder if maybe it was a quarterback thing. He's like, I don't really have trust in these new quarterbacks to be able to get me the ball and to play at a high level like Talia did. I don't know exactly. But in my opinion, and I don't want to like overdo it, but I think that he would have been better off staying at Maryland. I'm really curious what offers he picked up coming out of the portal. There's no way that there was like no Power 5s looking at him. Maybe he had some offers from some. Maybe it's like an NIL thing, and Charlotte's giving him maybe like a bag or something like that. I don't know, but it is interesting that he transferred to Charlotte. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked On Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked On Terps.